Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and I want to announce that Chelmsford Telemedia is broadcasting this meeting live and also taping for later rebroadcast. If anybody else here is taping it, or audio video taping, please let me know at this time from the Independent. Okay, we have several public service announcements. We'll start with Tricia Zurus, our town clerk.
Good evening. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thanks. First thing I wanted to announce is that our annual town election is going to take place on April 3rd this year. And in preparation for that, we want to ask that the residents of Chelmsford consider stepping up and possibly getting more involved in their local government. Nomination papers for town-wide offices are available now through February 9th. The townwide offices are as follows on the ballot. 2 seats for the Board of Selectmen, so if they want to sit with your very distinguished characters up here. 1 for School Committee, 3 for Planning Board, 1 for Board of Health. Also, there's 1 unexpired term for the Board of Health, 2 for Library Trustee, 1 for Cemetery Commission. Those townwide papers you can pick up, and there's 50, the requirement is 50 certified signatures from any registered voter in town. For town meeting rep, we have quite a few new faces already starting to pop up, which is nice, but we do have 6 seats for each one of the 9 precincts that are up for grabs, as well as 2 seats in Precinct 2 for 1 unexpired year term and 1 unexpired term for Precinct 6. So I'm a little concerned about Precinct 9, so if anybody's got friends in Precinct 9, please reach out to them. Ask them to consider pulling papers for town meeting rep. We've only had 1 incumbent so far return their letter saying that they're interested in running in Precinct 9. So that is one area that we're a little behind schedule on. We do update our pulled papers list every day. You can find that list on the town clerk's website. If you go to the town clerk under town departments and the elections tab, you'll see something that says pulled papers. And every single day that we have somebody responding to that, we do update the website. So anybody who does pull papers has till February 13th to return their papers to the town clerk's office and the Board of Registrars. And the last day to register to vote for the April 3rd town election is March 14th, and will be open from 8:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. on that day to register to vote. This is also a reminder to existing board members and committee members that were on the ballot last year. The Office of Campaign and Political Finance reports for the year end are due next Monday, the 22nd. Actually, not next Monday, but January 22nd by 5 p.m. And also, all municipal employees, board and committee members, and town employees are required to take their ethics training. And so please check the dates of your ethics training. And if you haven't turned in your certificate yet, please make sure that the town clerk's office has that on file. Does anybody have any questions about our upcoming election or nomination papers?
Okay, any questions about the calendar of election and town meeting activities?
Yes.
Just one simple question.
Yes.
On the town meeting members for not a full term, do they pull papers specifically for a shorter period?
Yes, they do. We do have those nomination papers ready for those unexpired terms.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next is an announcement about a special joint meeting that this board will be having with the Board of Health at our next regular meeting, which is on January 29th at 7 p.m. We did have 1 member of the Board of Health who resigned because he was moving out of town. So if anyone is interested in being appointed to fill the remainder of that term, you can submit a letter of interest or a committee application to this board prior to the January 29th joint meeting. And as the town clerk just said, this appointment would be just until the April election. at which time the person who was appointed could choose to run for the remainder of that term or not. So if anybody's interested, you have till January 29th to get your letter to us. Thank you on that. And next is Winterfest. Who's here to talk about Winterfest? Becky is going to tell us about Winterfest.
Do you want to give them? Sure. Hi, I'm Becky Herman, if you don't know. I'm the library director, and I have a few books I can give to those of you who haven't been down to the library yet to pick them up.
I already have one.
I'm here to talk on behalf of Winterfest. The library has been the site that kind of puts together the aggregate of activities. At our website, it's chelmsfordlibrary.org/Winterfest. And so if you're interested in knowing what's coming up, I can just kind of give you a quick update. Winterfest itself is, it started originally in 1993. I was looking back to see how long ago that we've been doing it, so I guess that makes this the 25th year, doesn't it? So that's pretty exciting, and we are working together with other community groups and town departments to put on a bunch of different activities for your pleasure. We start off on February 2nd, the Friday night, with the Winterfest Social. Last year we did a winter escape where we had some mini escape rooms, and they were so popular we had about 400 people. We decided that we would do that again. Our challenge this year was to tie it in with our one book, which is Kristen Hanna's book, The Nightingale. It's a World War II novel that's set in France, so a lot of the escape room challenges are going to have to do with the French resistance and codes and traveling, Mata Hari kind of things too, so that might be kind of fun. We also are offering you some delicious foods that different local restaurants are providing. We have a live jazz band that will be doing some music from the period, some French influenced and some jazz standards from the 30s and 40s. And tickets are limited, so they are available now online. You can purchase them, and also in the library. They're $20. We also have, as part of that, the One Book Chelmsford, actually the following week, just that Kristen Hanna will be at the Performing Arts Center. She will be there February 9th in conversation. Hank Philippi Ryan will actually be interviewing her as part of that, so that should be fun too. So again, register online, chelmsfordlibrary.org, either it's One Book or Winterfest. But I also, just because we are the host for all the other Winterfest activities on our website, I wanted to just let people know what other things are coming up. So the Chelmsford Community Center has a Scottish country dancing program, and apparently you don't need any dance experience to do that. So that's happening on Friday also. And then there is at the Center for the Arts, there is a carnival band doing Brazilian music, which is Fernando Holt's band. Saturday there is a pancake breakfast that is at St. Mary's Parish. And we also, the Chelmsford Cultural Council also sponsors a photography contest, and they actually are also involved with the Scottish dancing that was happening on Friday night too. So they're big supporters of the community, and they do a lot for us. There is a snow painting party with hot chocolate at the Chelmsford Dog Park. That is happening on Saturday, so that would be something to look for. And then the Central Cooperative Nursery School is doing a winter carnival too. The Girl Scout Troops number 68172 is holding a malt shop at the Central Baptist Church, and there is a Winterfest celebration of dance that will be held also at the Chelmsford Community Center in North Chelmsford. So, and let's not forget ever that they're at the senior centers that we have a wonderful Chowder Fest. And that will be with local music by John Mansfield. So that's pretty much Saturday. And then Sunday, we, as part of the initial Winterfest, began as more of a celebration of open space and conservation land. And so we are keeping with that tradition where the Chelmsford Land Conservation Trust is sponsoring a winter walk on either Bartlett Woodlot or the Skunk Island, depending on the weather and conditions. And then there's a free public skate at the Forum. And then we have the finale for the photography contest that the Chelmsford Cultural Council does, and that's again at the library. So obviously all things and events are subject to change depending on if we have another storm like we had recently, but we're going to cross our fingers. We do have snow for winter this year, because lots of years we've had Winterfest without any winter snow, so we're on track so far. So does anyone have any questions about those? Glenn?
Is there a Cliff Notes version of this?
Have you opened it? It's actually quite large, the type.
It isn't a pretty easy read. I've started reading it, and it's not as intimidating as it looks.
It's not at all. It's actually a very fast read, and you don't have to have read the entire book before you see her speak. I mean, what we also do is, what in your book that we gave you, there's also a brochure of all the different events that have to do with one book, Chelmsford, but I don't want to take up your time talking about all of those events besides Winterfest. But if you go online, we have everything from a lecture on the historical context, and we have a Holocaust survivor who's coming to do a talk, and some craft programs and things that just sort of highlight the role of women in the war too. So there's a lot of fun things and a lot of sort of profound things that you can come and hear at the library. So, any other questions? Did I miss anybody that didn't get a book? Okay.
Okay, thank
And if you haven't picked up your book, come down to the library. We still have some available. Thank you.
Okay, take the flyer. Thank you.
And I have to stay for the liquor license, I think.
Yeah.
Well, we could take that out of order. If you're anxious to get home, we could take that out of order.
Well, I'm actually anxious to go back to the library because I have to run a book group.
Okay, well, how about if we take that one license out of order for the Chelmsford Public Library? You have that one?
So the only caveat that I wanted to point out on the liquor license is that I gave a copy of both my TIPS certified card and then also another staffer's. And the reason I did two is because my oldest daughter is due that week, and so I'm thinking she's going to time it so that she's not going to have her baby on Winterfest night. But just in case, I made sure that we had a backup person.
Okay, great. All right, does anybody have any questions regarding this one-day license? This is something that we grant typically every year.
I'd make a motion to approve the one-day beer and wine license for the Library Winterfest event to be held on February 2nd, 2018, at the Chelmsford Public Library at 225 Boston Road.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you very much. I hope I see you all there.
see you there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next is the open session of the meeting. If there's anybody here that would like to speak to the board on any topic, now is your opportunity to do that. Okay, we will go on then to committee vacancies.
There are the following vacancies are available on committees and boards on town as of January 8th, 2018. One associate member on the Board of Appeals. The CCA Advisory Committee has 2 vacancies. The Center Village Master Plan Implementation Committee has 1 vacancy. The Civic Committee has 4 vacancies. The Community Action Program Committee has 2 vacancies. There are up to 21 vacancies on the Cultural Council. The Energy Conservation Committee has 2 vacancies. The Holiday Decorating Committee has 3 vacancies. All applicants are welcome on the Parade Committee. Public Celebrations Committee has 5 vacancies. Recycling Committee has 1 vacancy. Sign Advisory Committee has 2 vacancies. The Skate Park Committee has 2 vacancies. The Tree Committee has 1 vacancy, and the Vinyl Square Strategic Action Plan Committee has 1 vacancy. If you are interested in serving on a town board or committee, please apply at the town website or contact the town manager's office.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is the continuation of a public hearing having to do with the town's right of first refusal for a parcel at 160 Mill Road. This land to review the discussion that we had at our last meeting is under Chapter 61B, which means that they did pay reduced taxes on the property. So because of that benefit, the town does have the right of first refusal to purchase the property if the town is willing and able to pay the market rate for the property. so far, just to give an update, at our last meeting, Planning Board Chairman George Zaharoulis mentioned the Planning Board indicated that they did not have any need for this land, and we also received an email from the Conservation Commission that they also would pass on this parcel. I don't know that we've gotten anything.
I've also heard from the Chelmsford Land Conservation Trust, they have
Okay.
no interest in acquiring the rights for the parcel as well.
Okay,
So at this point, I'm not aware of any entity, conservation or such, that is expressing interest in the town exercising any such rights.
okay. And this has been advertised as a public hearing, so if there's anybody that would like to speak about it, you're welcome to do so at this time. Okay, apparently not, so do we have a motion to waive the right of first refusal?
I would make a motion to for the selectmen to waive the right of first refusal for the parcel at 160 Mill Road.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, next on the agenda is licenses. We'll go back to the common victular license. The first one that we have is Girasol Central American Food at 313 Littleton Road. Is there anybody here representing, if you'd like to come up to the microphone?
Good evening.
And if you
I'm
wanna-
Dave McDonald, and this is Marina Oriana.
Okay, if you want to tell us a little bit about what it is you're planning here and.
Sure. We'd like to, well, first of all, thank you for your time and consideration this evening. We're in the process of redoing what used to be Antonio's Pizzeria, Unit 1, 313 Littleton Road. Our intent is to open a Central American food business there. We've been following the plans, and we're pretty well established as far as renovating and getting everything together as far as our certification and our inspections and licensing. And we like to operate a small dine-in, less than 20 folks at seats in the restaurant, and mostly a focus on takeout food.
Okay, and I do see a request for an entertainment license also.
The entertainment license is to have, my understanding is we needed it to have a TV and/or music in the establishment. So we don't have any big plans for any live entertainment. We just would like to be able to provide some setting music for patrons while they're dining.
Okay. Are there any questions for the applicants? Okay. If not, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the common victual license for Girasol Central American Food to be exercised on the premises at 313 Littleton Road, Unit 1.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Okay,
you very much.
good
We
luck.
appreciate your time this evening.
Okay, we have now another one-day license for St. Bartlett's Church.
I'll make a motion to approve the application for a one-day license for the pre-Lenten dinner to be held at St. Bartlett's Armenian Church at 180 Old Westford Road on February 10th, 2018.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, next up is the introduction of our Director of Business Development. Paul, would you like to?
Sure, if Lisa would go to the podium. We're pleased to introduce to you this evening Lisa Marrone, who's our newly hired Director of Business Development. She began her employment with the town last week, and so thought it appropriate to introduce her formally to the board and to the community this evening. I know there's been some write-up in the media about her arrival, but we thought it best to hear from Lisa directly herself, so.
Good evening, Board of Selectmen and Selectwomen. Thank you for introducing me and to including me in your agenda tonight. Very excited to be a part of the team here. The role of business development is very familiar to me. I've spent more than 20 years working in the industry of business development, and I enjoy what I do. I will work hard at my job and my duties and my responsibilities, and I look forward to getting started. And I just want to thank the town of Chelmsford for giving me this exciting opportunity. So thank you all very much.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Lisa at this time? As you know, we have high expectations.
Yes, I am fully aware.
Did you already spend the money?
No, I've got 3 days under my belt, so there's no going back.
Very good, good to hear that. Okay, well, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome
Thank you
to
very much. You can
Chelmsford.
find me in room 206 here on the
Okay.
second floor if you need me for anything. Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, under our reports and presentations, there are 3 citizen petition articles that have fulfilled all the requirements to be placed on the spring annual town meeting warrant. I see that there is at least one representative here who is responsible for at least 2, if not 3 of them. If you'd like to come up and speak to them, Mr. Latina, also, obviously with the understanding that there'll be no vote tonight. I mean, you have met all the criteria to get on the annual warrant. It'll be April when we make our recommendations, and then, as you know, when town meeting happens, then you have another opportunity to advocate for the warrant articles.
You have some handouts. Hi, my name is Brian Latina. I'm a Precinct 4 town meeting rep and live at 15 Jesse Road here in Chelmsford. And I'd like to welcome our development person to the team. Hopefully I won't cause any problems with that and unmarket us. There are 3 petitions. I'm a party to, direct party to the first one, the 101 Mill Road petition. And this came by way of a former resident of the town, and she could not be here tonight. She wanted to address the Board of Selectmen, and I gave you a write-up that she asked me to read to you. If it gets a little long, I'll stop, but you have a full write-up of her words. She had a medical need tonight, so she couldn't attend. The Adams House at 101 Mill Road, the citizen article is for the Adams House that was built in 1813, and it has a rich history. It is the house itself is historic. It can be brought back to its original condition of the 1800s and then used to accentuate its history and what it is. And Joan advised that, she said, my sister Marianne and I came forward last summer in 2017 to talk with the Historic Commission and the Committee of Chelmsford. This was the 101 Town Committee, to decide what to use the house for. Because we knew that the town did not have the information about the house that we could provide. My grandfather owned the house from 1928 to 1944, and his family was so large that my mother and her sisters and brother lived there for many years. We as children also lived and played in the house during the 1940s. We have a close connection to the house, so that when we learned that the house would be sold by the town through the bidding process, we worked hard to find an interested person to purchase the house, someone who would appreciate the historic value and want to preserve it. Difficult because of the time limitation. She came to us rather late in the process. When no bid came in on the property, we thought about the house and how it could be used and how could this be done. My sister proposed the idea of the house being used as an inn, an early colonial inn, to follow the decor and design of the Federalist House as it was in the 1800s. Thus, we went forward with a citizen's petition for the 2018 Springtown meeting. Chelmsford is a unique town in that there are no other towns in the country that we could find with the same name. It is historic. We believe that the idea of a small country colonial inn is a perfect solution. It would be called the Adams Historic Inn of Chelmsford or something of the like. The inn would provide a continual flow of revenue for the town. The house contains enough bedrooms to accommodate a small number of guests. The kitchen area is large, and there would be sufficient space for laundry. Above the kitchen and laundry areas are live-in accommodations for the innkeepers. As an inn, special small functions and events could be held in certain areas of the house not to interfere with the guests staying there. Inside the inn, one room, perhaps the right room in the front, overlooking the pond, could be a library or a museum combination. Area where documents relevant to the Adams and their achievements could be kept. These items would tell the stories of Samuel Adams, who built the first sawmill in 1656, as well as a grist mill in exchange for land. The sawmill was operated by the Adams for 5 generations until 1899. Citizens of Chelmsford, lovers of history, could visit, and as a historic program for Chelmsford schools, that could be part of the library. Then there was the Adams Grant in 1656, which says Henry Adams, his wife Edith, and their 9 children immigrated from England to Boston in 1636. He received a land grant from Mount Wollaston, which later became a section of Quincy. Thus began the Adams family dynasty in America. Son Samuel, Thomas, and John removed to Concord, and Thomas was one of the 29 petitioners to found Chelmsford in 1655. Inhabitants were in dire need of a corn, grist, and sawmill, so Thomas sent his brother Samuel a wheelwright in the Adams Grant. July Day Ye 3rd, 1656, established Captain Samuel Adams in the mills on Great Brook. From Captain Adams' youngest brother Joseph descended Presidents John Adams and John Quincy Adams. The inn would be restored to bring back the interior decor of the early colonial house. The inn would be offer cuisine from the 1800s with other special foods and recipes of the colonial period. We believe the inn would become a destination point for those who are looking for a historic experience. It is a beautiful location overlooking the historic mill stream where tours could also be offered, again providing valuable historic experience for guests of the inn. We believe the innkeepers could be found who would love the opportunity to operate such a historic inn and bring to life the era as well as the enjoyment of this food. We could either lease or purchase the property, or they could either lease or purchase the property. The inn would help the town by restoring history of this house, which is most important to what the town embraces and proudly preserves. In Chelmsford, there now is no such historic country inn. To conclude, we would work to find funding for restoration, working with the restrictions or regulations of the town that the town of Chelmsford requires. Thank you, Joan Paley, and she is the designer of and illustrator of children's books, and she's worked in book publishing for many years and has a background to help produce books such stories, cookbooks, graphics, with the with history for the eventual preservation of the inn. And she would work with others who have committed their time to help preserve the house. It would be wonderful for citizens of Chelmsford to join with whatever skills and ideas that they may have and want to contribute. We found Joan, as you know, I was on the 101 Mill Road Committee for about 1.5 years. We did have some discussions about using it as a residence and also as a museum, library, and that sort of thing. And we homed in on using it for a venue, which we asked for some funding and were denied the funding at a town meeting. But the museum idea, according to Joan, sounded like a nice little project for that particular historic house.
Okay.
And yes, that is the Sam Adams that we all know and love in the beer that's there, but 100 years later. So that was a resident from our town. That's the gist of the 101 Mill proposal to use that building as an inn and a place for people to come to.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
Okay. I mean, as I said, we're not taking a vote tonight, so.
No, but just flushing out the
Well, I think,
story.
go ahead, but I think it'll be fleshed out in much more detail later, but go ahead.
So, is this really a bed and breakfast? Is that what you're proposing?
The proposal is more of an inn. I guess you could argue bed and breakfast.
Or distinction?
A, B, and B type of functions are all over the country. This one has the historic and museum content to it. Something on the order of much less than the Concord Inn, where you can go and see something historic and maybe get a bite or stay there, I think is what Joan is proposing.
There was a long process where there was a committee looking at viable alternatives.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, it basically came down to there was really no viable alternative, no performer, no anything to suggest that there was going to be a return on investment of whatever.
Well, I'd argue that there was. Our charge at town meeting, from town meeting, was to come up with some ideas. It wasn't to come up with a business plan. I think that's kind of the angle that we're looking at. The selectmen asked us at the end of that project to come up with a business plan, and that was our proposal, to ask for funding for a business plan to do it properly. When you're looking to market something and look at a business plan, you'd want to do it in a professional way, and that's what the committee asked for a very specific purpose, for a venue.
So,
Not
I mean,
for all the
I don't
others.
think we don't need to
well, I just have a
relitigate
question of
what we
Paul.
did last year.
Paul, in relation to the sequencing of things. We also have a proposal to change the covenant
Right, and that's what
on
we're
selling the property at the same time that this is brought forward. How does this,
You currently have the authority to dispose of the property and place a covenant on the property. This article would not change that. What this was is, this would be a sense of the town meeting. There's no appropriation under this article. There's no impact on the transfer or use of the property. Basically, it's a proposal, and they're seeking to see if the town meeting would vote to endorse such a proposal.
so as far as selling the property, couldn't sell it until this played out?
Sure you could.
Sure you could.
And I expect the procurement process to be completed prior to town meeting. My guess is that procurement process will probably be completed in February or early March.
So the town meeting would then change the zoning, basically changing the
No,
zoning?
no, at this point, the action would be
need.
moot, because there'd be no,
We wipe the warrant out.
right, the town would no longer have title to the property.
On a reverse sequence of that, if the procurement went forward and somebody said they would like to turn this into an inn and were able to purchase it,
Right.
what exactly is the
That could happen
turnaround?
under zoning, yeah, that's
What's the
allowed.
turnaround on them trying to get the zoning, and does it really like put
No,
the?
it's allowed, that's an allowed use by zoning.
That
This
is
type
a
of-
lot,
yes,
an
yeah.
inn, okay.
Yeah.
Because
So it's zoned for an inn now.
Right, yes, it's an allowed use in that area.
even though we're going through with the
Right.
two-family
Right.
on the,
Right,
that would be okay.
right.
Okay.
So Brian may get his way without
Well,
actually going.
someone could buy it, and
Yeah.
then here's an idea thrown out by someone that recognizes what that house is and what it was, and she's simply proposing that we could keep it as a town, use it for an inn, and she's proposing, as our committee did, that we could do a spiral process to come up with some initial funds to do some basic, cleanup work. You don't want a suspended ceiling like what we have here. And this is a historic building as well. If you look at the dates on the outside, this is added material here. But I'm guessing above the suspended ceiling here, as in that house, it's been protected from years of,
But are we saying that we could sell the property, and this would still go to town meeting, but are you saying that you're expecting the town to do some sort of amenity work out there to assist this?
The idea was to consider an inn in this proposal. You're correct, the selectmen have been handed this property over to sell, but as a previous town manager had once famously said, just because you give me money and tell me I can hire someone, I don't have to. So the town manager and the selectmen don't have to sell the house prior to this town meeting, and perhaps the town meeting would look at it and say, hey, well, that sounds like a good idea. By the time town meeting comes around, Joan and her team, there were 20 signatures on this proposal, residents, voters, that would help. There were people that were funding it. She had a different charge than our committee did. And I think with her background and having lived in the house and understanding the Adams family legacy and recognizing that part of it, she may have more gunpowder than we did in town meeting.
Well, considering that we can approve this revised covenant tonight, isn't it likely that we would be putting it up for sale before town meeting in 3 months?
Yes, it'll be out on the market within the next 2 weeks.
And if it gets sold, this goes away.
No.
This-
It'll
this
still,
still-
it'll still be
okay.
on
You
town
can still
meeting.
endorse it. It's basically, it's
It
a-
really is, it has no
has no,
legal,
it has no legal impact. You know,
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
kind of
Just
like,
sort of
you
send
could
the
hold it
message.
back or have a discussion with Joan and see if she has found a funder to buy the thing. It's very possible that she, by that point, would have time to find someone to buy it or lease it from the town.
they could offer a proposal as
There you
part of the
go.
procurement
Right.
disposal.
And we can accept or reject any proposals that come to us.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
So Brian, did you want to speak at all about your
I
your other-
could just briefly talk about the second warrant article. I'm interested in it. I didn't write it. The BAOD is a proposal to recognize that we made some quick changes to our industrial area over near my precinct 4, between, we call it the Route 129 area, between Turnpike Road and Route 3, more or less 129 in that zone. Basically, what we did is we looked at the first 3 proposed projects, and I don't know if one is formally proposed at this point, but we have 168 unit, 16 stories of residential area in a little pine grove at the end of Warren Avenue, and I think some of the residents don't recognize that yet. This proposal is looking at our zoning and our use regulations and saying, RM district, you're about to take the area over by Russell Mill, that's an RM district, and you could build a certain number of multifamily houses. Well, no one at town meeting, I suspect, looked at our buffer zone between Turnpike Road and the 129 CAIOD project and assumed that you were going to put 16 stories on Turnpike Road with more than 1,000, perhaps 2,000 cars on Turnpike in addition. There's only about 160 residents on Turnpike Road right now. So more than almost doubling that, probably tripling the car capacity of Turnpike Road, cliff at one end and a pond at the other. So what we're doing is codifying that and saying, no, it's an RM district. We want that district to be, I think it's 4 to 6 units per acre, not 19.
Right, and
19
then
units.
we got a lot from Christine at our
Yes.
last meeting, so.
So that is, it's a town meeting article to codify that zone and to recognize that there were some mistakes made when you first changed the zoning. Any questions or?
How'd you arrive at 16 stories?
There's 2 5-story buildings that have been approved, 1 4-story building, and 1 2-story building. If you add those up, including the garages on 2 of the buildings, that's 16 stories. Biggest project Chelmsford has ever had. And I don't think our fire truck can reach to the top of that, so you're talking $1 million truck before you build this thing.
Okay, did you want to speak at all about the conflict of interest one?
Conflict of interest bylaw, that's one that I helped pen. Town of Framingham, now the city of Framingham, used exactly the language that we proposed. And this is, again, Russell Mill had several interested parties, in fact, had a financial interest in that property changing from open space to RM, to putting 4 multifamily or single-family homes on that for the purposes of generating revenue to build a swimming pool. What this article recognizes is that if you're an attorney and you're going to get paid for your vote, or you're a town meeting rep and you're a real estate agent, and your family happens to be sitting in town meeting and can raise their hand and vote for this thing, you should have to let town meeting know and our residents know that I have a financial interest in this thing. And that's basically what this conflict of interest article says. It says, if Brian has a an interest in voting yes on this project, and I'm the real estate agent who's going to get $10,000 if this project is rezoned, I need to come up to the board and say before the meeting, I have a financial interest in this. And we've gotten some feedback from our town attorney saying, well, how do you remedy that if I don't say anything and I had a financial interest in it? And we've codified that as well and used his advice, basically saying, I didn't tell you that I voted this way. It wouldn't reverse the vote, but it would recognize that I basically lied to town meeting and said, hey, I should have said something and I didn't. So this is basically taking another town's bylaw and using it, recognizing that we should not have conflict of interest, and we should recognize that when we do, we should say that we do. Not unlike any vote that you might take where you have to recuse yourself.
Okay.
Town meeting doesn't have to.
Right, okay,
So this is basically saying, hey, you have to recognize it.
okay, thank you.
Okay? Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is, we have 3 resolutions that are being put forward by the Massachusetts Municipal Association for a vote at the conference that will be held on January 19th and 20th in Boston. These are resolutions that they have come up with having to do with fiscal partnership. It's the first one, the sales and use tax question that's supposedly going to be on the ballot in November, and having to do with climate change. We can take them all together, or we can take them one at a time, depending on how we want to go forward. During the business meeting of the Massachusetts Municipal Association, each community gets one vote on each of these questions. So we'd be looking for the sense of this board on how the representative for the town of Chelmsford should vote on these. Do we have any discussion, questions, or anything on any of the resolutions? Most of them are pretty general. The sales and use tax one is a little bit out of the ordinary. They're opposing it. The Mass Municipal Association opposes a decrease in the sales tax with the logic that would reduce the local aid that would be available for communities. So that's kind of,
It would seem that if we lowered the sales tax, they couldn't do the other two. It would be meaningless because they wouldn't have any money to do with the other two.
probably not a lot of other things either, yeah. Well, although the fiscal partnership one is one that we kind of see every year. It's just encouraging all levels of government to work together. And then the climate change one is kind of a new one too, and I think that might have something to do with things that are going on at the national level. But so any further discussion or
I had a
sense?
question, though, trying to, read the way they wrote this.
Mhm.
And there are 2 paragraphs that address Chapter 70 funding in the first one. Did I read it as such that they were looking at redoing the way the formula worked, or just funding it?
I think all of the above.
Yeah, I think whatever.
So I think, obviously Chelmsford should support the first one, because if it changes the formula for Chapter, it can't get any worse for us.
You're right about that.
So we should at least support the first one. We can talk about the other 2.
Is that a motion?
I'd make a motion to support the first one.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to support the first resolution and a second. Is there any further discussion on the first resolution? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So what about the second one then? The one having to do with the sales tax. Any thoughts? I know it sounds good to lower taxes. Everybody wants to lower taxes, but the ramifications might be, unintended consequences, as Glenn pointed out.
Because that's when we use the tax,
I think.
or that's for people out of like tourists instead of,
Isn't,
Microphone.
excuse me.
isn't that for people who buy things out of state and bring them back in? You're supposed to pay the sales tax.
Right, but what I think George is saying, it's a use sort of, so if you don't buy anything, you don't pay it.
That's true. That's so true, yeah. I mean, I think our sales tax is pretty fair as far as exempting food and clothing. I mean, you almost don't have to buy anything that would be subject to sales tax if you lived a certain way.
If you live close to New Hampshire.
Well, no,
You
even
still have
if
to
you,
report it.
no,
So-
I mean, if you live in Chelmsford, you wouldn't have to pay a sales tax if you didn't go out to eat, or if, you didn't buy electronics or books.
If you go to New Hampshire, you buy a washer dryer, you're supposed to report that
That's right.
on your mass taxes.
You have a pickup truck?
But anyway, we're not going to talk about how we circumvent these laws.
But on a separate note, I mean, our edition of the Beacon that was given to us on the way in says experts forecast solid tax growth in the state of Massachusetts. So for me, it's like, well, if we're going to have solid tax growth, I don't mind reducing the sales tax.
But then with the solid tax growth, we might get to Chapter 70 like we just talked about.
Well,
So, I mean,
if we redo the formula, that's,
well, we've had predictions of solid tax receipts before, and they seem to be subject to fluctuation. But anyway, so is that a motion to not support that
I'm
resolution
not
number
making
2?
two in a row. I need
Okay.
some help here.
I make a motion to agree with their opposition to the ballot question that we reduce the sales and use tax.
I
So
agree.
you're supporting resolution 2?
Yes.
Okay,
So you want to keep the sales tax where it is?
Yes.
I'll second that.
okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I agree with if you are not a big spender, you can save yourself the money on the sales tax. So this is something that each individual can control. So I don't mind leaving
is
it at
discretionary,
6.25.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion to support resolution number 2?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Thank you. All right, the third one has to do with climate change. I don't remember exactly everything that's in it, but basically, to support the Paris Climate Change Agreement seems to be the gist of it. Make efforts to combat climate change at the state level, despite what might happen at the federal level.
There is discussion in here about stormwater infrastructure. Would that mean we get some money to help us with that endeavor?
Well, in theory, anything that's an unfunded, that's a mandate needs to be funded, right? So you would hope.
Talking about $1 billion in water infrastructure. Do we get any of that?
Our Merrimack River Bank up in North Chelmsford wouldn't be affected by it, too.
No, that's FEMA money, that's federal money.
All right.
Any other thoughts, discussion, motions?
Well, I will say, I met with someone from Tesla this week to talk about solar on my home, and they were telling me that Chelmsford, well, Massachusetts is now 25% renewable energy, solar and wind, which is impressive, and I noticed that was in here, and I'm a big fan of that, so I think we need to keep fostering that. I think the goal is by 2035, I think, to be 100% renewable.
So is that a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion to support the third resolution presented here tonight.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, very good, thank you. All right,
Don't we have to vote on somebody to represent us?
not if it's, no,
Not if it's you?
not if it's the chairman, correct. Not if it's me.
Okay.
Let's put it pretty bluntly, George.
Well, no, I just thought I was going to nominate you anyway.
Well,
Pat,
thank you.
Because we had the last 3 years.
Right?
He's just looking for a chance to nominate you.
Well, if you'd like to, George, I'll let you do that. All right, next on our agenda is the restrictive covenant for 101 Mill Road that we've,
We want to postpone consideration of this until Paul Haverty, town
Okay.
council, arrives.
all right, we
I
can,
gave him an estimate of 8 o'clock.
okay,
You're
we can
ahead
jump
of
down then to town manager reports and,
Saving us money.
Right, trying to say exactly. Don't want him sitting there, the meter running.
Home, get in the car.
The first item is a
Start
stop
like
sign
mine.
request in the Woodbine Street area. The origin of this came from the planning board, where when they were doing a definitive subdivision plan at the property at 26 Wildwood, there was discussion from abutters about the need for a stop sign at the intersection of Woodbine and Cypress Street. So it was referred here. When that request came in, that's a T intersection at the end of Cypress Street at Woodbine. We forwarded that to the Police Department and Public Works. You have in your packet the correspondence from Chief Spinney informing the board that the Police Department Special Services Traffic Unit reviewed the area of Cypress and Woodbine Streets for the suitability of a stop sign. They noted the new single-family home being constructed behind 12 and 14 Woodbine Street, and that the driveway from this residence is across from Cypress Street. Chief Spinney explains that Traffic Officer Richardson, along with Highway Superintendent Larry Ferrera, visited the area in question. It is clear the driveway at this new residence in Cypress Street do not align and should not cause confusion to a motorist on Cypress Street. There's also a large double tree across from Cypress Street that clearly shows Cypress Street ends, and therefore the police department does not feel a stop sign is needed at this location. However, the correspondence, the chief then writes in a separate correspondence that while they were out reviewing this request that on Woodbine Street, they came across 2 other intersections which they felt did not have adequate safety control. And I think the difference here is the difference between T intersections and cross intersections. And they noted that at the intersection of Wildwood and Woodbine Street, they found a stop sign located on the south side of Wildwood and Woodbine, but no signage on the north side of the intersection. In addition, there are no stop signs exiting at the intersection of Evergreen and Woodbine Streets, and that a 4-way intersection without any traffic control signage can be problematic, especially for someone operating a motor vehicle unfamiliar with the area. Therefore, the recommendation is that a stop sign be placed on the north side of Woodbine Street at Wildwood for the traffic on Wildwood Street to stop, and that a stop sign be placed on the north and south side of Woodbine Street at Evergreen Street, intended for traffic on Evergreen Street to stop. So obviously, the fundamental principle here is that the cross intersections, there be stop signs posted, but the T intersection is not. And in speaking to Chief Spinney earlier today, the concern is that if you open up the notion of stop signs at the T intersections, there are
Everywhere.
a lot of those in the community that you would then sort of then be rolling out into. And so,
especially
again,
in a neighborhood.
in the neighborhood. So his recommendation, again, would be under consideration of this is to install them where there's, sort of a traffic going across, and it's unclear if you're unfamiliar with the area who has to stop, but not at those where you're coming to a T. And again, under the town's bylaws, Board of Selectmen has to approve the placement of any and all stop signs in the community.
Do you have any questions?
No question, I'll make a comment, though. I'm really familiar with these neighborhoods, just because my kids grew up in the Westlands, and I drive through there all the time. And I agree with Chief Spinney, those streets, in whether you're going down all the side streets, Linwood and everything off at Dalton, at all the cross roads, there are stop signs.
Right.
The main, Linwood is wide open.
Right.
This would be, just continue sort of that theme throughout that whole area in the Westlands.
So does that mean you want more?
Yeah, I don't see anything wrong. I would agree that it is confusing on some of those streets when there isn't a stop sign. You'll see someone come up and, you're on the wider of the 2 roads and think you have the right of way, and they roll into it, and you're, hitting the brakes hard to just make sure you don't hit them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's confusing the way it is now because, you're crossing over the main street and there's no stop, but 1 block over there is a stop.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it would set, so yes, I'm in favor of approving the stop signs.
Okay. Any
Especially because there's so many kids in those neighborhoods.
Any other discussion? If not, do we have a motion?
I will make a motion to approve these amended stop sign requests for the corners of Woodbine and Evergreen and Woodbine and Wildwood Streets as presented.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any further discussion, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? George, are you yes?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. The next item, just want to report to the board is, since our last meeting, we have received communication from Mass Development at their Thursday, December 14th meeting. They voted to approve the town's request for the $1.35 million brownfields remediation grant for the Katrina Road parcel. We will soon be receiving a commitment letter from the agency. But essentially what's being required there is we have 9 months to act upon this approval, to convey the property to J.J. McCarthy LLC. Obviously they'll look for a commitment letter from the bank before they're going to release the $1.3 million, which again, they would provide. The request is that the town, the Board of Selectmen approve the municipal recovery language, which, if you may recall, I did present to you at a prior meeting, but I included it in again, so I don't know what the board's preference. Basically, the key here and what they're seeking is that this is sort of the new provision under the current administration where they're sort of looking for local communities to contribute to the recovery. You may have seen this also in the MBTA proposals for the expansion and so forth. It's the idea of the locals having putting a stake into the property. So this recovery language would require payment to Mass Development the amount of 15% of the economic benefit that the town would receive from the redevelopment of the property. And that's basically 15% of any increase in the property tax and that property, as well as any other related local taxes such as motor vehicle excise at this facility. So I don't think there's any harm if you want to revote the affirmation. I can then inform Mass Development you voted this on 2 occasions so that they're doubly sure, or I can just go back and cite the original vote. But I don't see a downside to having you reaffirm the commitment upon the notice of the grant approval.
That'd be a pretty good chunk of money, wouldn't it, if they're gonna be storing the buses there and stuff?
Yeah, but it's above what it would only be the increase beyond what they already store at,
So it'd just be
in
the
town.
additional
So
buses.
it's only the
they're
additional
bringing.
It's
buses,
15% of the increase.
15%. Yeah,
So that's,
and basically go for a 30-year period or until repayment.
Do we know that that amount of money is enough to clean up?
It's believed to be. We have no obligation. What will happen is we would, the conveyance of the property would take place within the 9 months by the start of the July, probably around July period. The remediation would go beyond that with the LSP, and at the end of that, there'll be an evaluation, and then there won't be another evaluation for a couple of years to see if anything returns. At that point, again, the town wouldn't be on the hook. They would look back to the state for assistance or DEP. All the evidence from the initial pilot program indicates that they believe that that will take care of it. And then it'll be in an adequate condition of which it would just basically be monitored for the next 20 years.
Okay, any other questions?
In this project, are the buses supposed to be stored indoors or outdoors?
Most of them will be stored outdoors.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, do we want to take
You
another?
want to know why? Because in these brownfield cleanup projects, one of the things that you have to worry about is the emissions getting trapped in under a roof and then having to deal with that. So if they're outside, a lot of these projects were converted to like park space and things like that. So having our bus, I don't want our kids in buses that are stored inside
No, good
collecting
question.
anything that.
So would it be proper to assume that they're going to asphalt a large
Yes.
portion of it?
Yes.
And if the stormwater thing comes back
Mhm.
and we set our rates based on the amount of
Mhm.
surface area you
Yeah.
have protected, they would be paying a sizable amount of money
Yes.
against that,
Yes.
correct?
And that wouldn't
But
be
they'd be paying that on
recoverable. Right.
129,
Right.
where they are
That would
now.
not be recoverable by the state.
We wouldn't be paying the
Right.
15% of that
No,
part.
no, it would only be on excise. It's almost like a sewer bill. It's a user fee.
All right, we can take another vote. Do you want to make a motion for this?
To approve the municipal recovery language for the Katrina Road Brownfields grant.
I'll make a motion to approve the language of the municipal vote language of the Katrina Road documentation.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, very good, thank you.
And then the last item I have under my report this evening is I have a first draft of the spring annual town meeting warrant. The board will be signing this in basically 3 meetings from now. In order to meet the April 3rd, as you heard earlier this evening, is the town election. And so in order to hit that 35-day period, you'll be signing it at your February 26th meeting. So I'll be bringing you revisions, in 3 weeks, and then the first meeting in February, then the final version at the last meeting in February. What you can see here is we have 28 articles to my knowledge at this point, although I heard today 1 or 2 additional may be coming. The town meeting will be held on April 30th. That's probably the first revision to the document. The town meeting is the last Monday in April, which is the 30th this year. It's the latest it can be. Normally, we fall the Monday after Patriots' Day, but because there's 5 Mondays in April, the charter provides that it's the last Monday in April. The warrant articles are generally straightforward. At the front of the warrant, as we see, the first one is reports of town committees. Next, we have an article to fund any collective bargaining agreements or arbitration awards and such that we expect would be received by that time for the public safety units. Amending the current fiscal year budget would be the next article. You then go on to the Neshoba Tech district assessment. Then it would be the Chelmsford Public Schools budget, then the general government operating budget, Finance Committee Reserve Fund, request to establish a special education reserve fund. The next would be the capital budget, the sewer enterprise fund operating budget. So there's your first 10, pretty custom with most town meetings. 11, enterprise fund for the forum, because we now will have ownership, and that capital fund that's in the legislation would then be converted to an enterprise fund. You then have the enterprise fund for the cable access operations, the annual enterprise fund for the golf course operations, and then I have a spaceholder for the enterprise fund for stormwater, because you may recall that delay was for a 1-year period, although we're now 6 months into that, we've heard neither hide nor hear. So I anticipate there's going to be no action on that, but I'm leaving it there as a placeholder, because as you can imagine, they'd have to give you pretty good notice if they're going to implement this thing. But anyway, it's there as a placeholder. Then moving on to Article 15 would be annual authorization of departmental revolving funds. Remember, that's like the police cruiser, the dog licenses. We have to vote that annually under state law. Article 16 would be a new revolving fund requested by the cemetery, and this would be for the purchase and display of wreaths and floral decorations. Basically, they had such success with that program this winter that they want to ensure that they have some means, if people are willing, to provide such a program in the future, because we may not be able to obtain that type of outside financial funding for the wreaths across America.
So they're going to sell wreaths?
Yeah. Offer people the opportunity, if they wish, to sell and display wreaths. And also, by opening up the floral decorations, it also gives them the ability, if they wanted to do something at Memorial Day. I mean, obviously, we display flags, and we also display the markers for veterans.
Right.
But this would be opened up to all sites at the cemetery. The next one would be the Cemetery Improvement Development Fund, which is the continued expansion of the cemetery. Article 18 is the Community Action Program Fund, the annual $10,000 contribution. Article 19 is the Community Preservation Fund, annual appropriation to meet the obligated debt service, administrative expenses, and reserves. Article 20 would be the accept a gift of land in the center related to the housing project. You may recall that was a planning board provision that they would donate the land. That has since received planning board approval for a A&R plan, approval not required plan, which is separate that into a separate parcel. We're waiting to see the record of that in the registry of deeds, and then obviously we would expect a submission by town meeting for them to convey that land. The town is to accept that gift of land. And then the next article, Article 21, would be the community request through the Community Preservation Fund to create a pathway and bridge across from the rail trail to the Bartlett Woodlot across that property. Article 22 begins the citizen petitions. That's the one for the multifamily zone that Ms. Bowman spoke of at last meeting, and Brian Latina addressed briefly this evening. Article 23 is a placeholder because, as George Zaharoulis indicated, the planning board is meeting this Wednesday evening, and they're discussing their own article. I'm sorry, go ahead, Laura.
Can we reverse the order of those, the placeholder?
Sure, that's, what-
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
If we had- If
Because I-
anybody wanted to change any of
because-
it.
yeah, you can let me know those things. I
I-
was doing it as a courtesy because, but yes, how I'll do whatever you want. I just didn't
I-
want to feel that I slighted a citizen petition, so I
But
put it in
I
that order.
think, I mean, we all know Ms. Bowman will withdraw her petition if she gets what she wants
Okay,
from the,
Okay.
the planning board, and I
Okay.
think if she doesn't, I think it gives her the opportunity to not be slighted.
so you want the planning board proposal to be considered first? Okay, all right,
Yes.
I will do that for the next iteration, okay.
And while we're talking about that, at the
Mm-hmm.
top, I would prefer if Neshoba Valley came after the public schools.
Okay.
That way, everyone will be done beating up the public schools
No,
by the time
we
they get
said
to.
we were going to revert, we were going to switch
No.
those every other year, and I don't remember.
No, we didn't, no, I said
I thought we
last year
said
I
we were gonna-
wanted it reversed.
This is the same order as last year, that's all I
And
can tell you.
I said
Okay.
last year I wanted it reversed, and Paul didn't hear me, and it didn't get reversed. And the
Okay.
reason was because Neshoba Valley is this tiny little amount and a very minor increase, and we spend an hour or two on that, and then we just fly by on the school, and the school is basically most of our budget. So I think we should really put that at the forefront, and then give the nod to Neshoba Valley if we still have energy at the end of the night.
All right, so
So-
if that's board's
Those
preference,
are my-
I'll
that's
swap
my-
those if
thank
that's the
you.
board's
Tho-
preference,
just
okay.
4 and 5 and 22 and 23 are
Okay.
the two swaps.
While we're
Okay.
discussing this, I just have a quick question on.
Yeah.
You remember in the fall town meeting, there was an issue about whether you could, someone could file an amendment to change the wording?
Mm-hmm.
Are, in particular, the capital budget in Article 15, are they written in a way that if someone wanted to amend the dollar amounts, that they could do that?
You can only, if the dollar amounts are included on the warrant, you can only amend the dollar amounts downward. You cannot
Okay.
exceed the,
So,
you
since we have the dollar amounts listed here,
you cannot exceed the request. So in other words,
Right.
if there's a dollar amount to spend $200,000 for road improvements, you cannot increase that at town meeting.
Correct.
However, you can decrease it.
all right, but so
Because-
since they're listed,
Yeah, you can't.
someone could go up and say, well, I only want to spend,
Yes, you can reduce the request.
You're
You-
right.
You cannot increase it.
we only want to give you $1
Because-
million for the parking lots at the high
And you
school.
can't swap it out
Right.
because it wasn't renounced.
Well, you can't add anything in its place. The idea is you're warning the inhabitants of the town what's being requested. So for example, the thought being is, we're warning the inhabitants of town, we're requesting to spend $200,000 on the roads. If you then come and say, hey, we want to spend $500,000, people say, wait a minute, we never contemplated we were going to spend $500,000. The idea is not to exceed. So therefore, you could reduce the request, but you can't increase it if the dollar amount's on the warrant. And that's been the convention in Chelmsford, and so that's the way we've done it. But what Laura's also correct, you cannot add things that aren't warned about either.
Right.
So it's in this way, it's pretty binding. I mean, we could just have a generic article and see if the town would approve a capital plan, and then it'd be a free-for-all, but that's really not giving good notice and warning of what's
Right.
being requested to the community.
But I just want to make sure that if someone showed up and took issue to the capital budget.
They could
and-
push it down.
And they wanted to cut costs, that
Yes,
they
you
could.
could definitely do that.
We were asked to make sure we worded it that way, so.
Article 24 is the next citizen petition on the town meeting meeting representatives' conflict of interest. Article 25 is the proposed use of the Adams House citizen petition article. And then I have two placeholders requested by Glenn Olenchuk that we believe will come forward from the Disabilities Commission. One would be to require restaurants to offer Braille menus. And I expect we'll hear from them in the weeks, the meetings ahead. And then the other one is to require that handicapped accessible parking spaces not only have the signage, which is a requirement, but they also want them to have the spaces painted blue. They think that that would be a better visual
The whole
indicator.
space.
The whole space, that when, if there's suitable material, that it be painted blue as an enhancement of notification. So again, I'm sure Len and others, Ann Smith and others may come in on that. So those are those two placeholders. And then the last article would have to do with street acceptances. And I know DPW is looking at that, particularly some of the long-term unaccepted roads. So those are the two that we have this evening. I think the ones that I alluded to earlier that I heard mention of today have to do with some sewer capital investment pertaining to, one of the sewer projects. I mean, it's not surprising to me. Right now, the sewer project has been completed almost a decade, and some of the early phases, like we've seen before at Progress Ave and so forth, are coming up. So I expect I may have those for your next warrant. So that's what we have at this point this evening. So that concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go back then to the 101 Mill Road restrictive covenant. And Mr. Harvey, if you come up, and if you want to tell us a little bit about the covenant. I know several of us have questions about it.
So if you recall, last time there was a discussion about the covenant and whether or not we could actually get it down to something along the lines of a one-page covenant that was effectuating the same goal, which is to protect the historic nature of the structure and to make sure that it remains a single family. So that's what this covenant is going to do. It's less like the very lengthy historic preservation restriction type of covenant that was previously put in place, which seemed to have scared off a lot of potential buyers. So this is a lot less of a threatening type of covenant, but it does do exactly what we were looking for, which is to make sure that it remains a single-family house and that the architecturally significant features also would be remaining in place.
Okay, and just to clarify what you just said, single or two-family?
Single or two-family, sorry, yes.
Well, I have a couple of questions to begin with. Now, I thought that this would be granted by this Board of Selectmen and not by the Historic Commission. That was my understanding since we had,
I think the original had it as being issued by the Historic
Preservation
District Commission.
restriction, right.
Yeah,
well,
so
the
that-
original one was.
Right, so we could change that. I would have to take a look at how the property was purchased by the town and whether or not it was being done for that purpose. Yeah, I'd have to go back and take a look at
Okay.
that. That wasn't something I was focusing on when I was drafting this.
Would that change in what you've written, if the owner decides he wants to do X? He would have to get permission by the Historical Commission and then the Board of Selectmen. But if it's issued by the Board of Selectmen, does the order change, or does it stay the same?
Well, it depends on how you want the preservation restriction to read, really. I mean, if you want all of the power to stay with the board, but if I recall, when we met previously, the idea was to still have the Historic Commission review it and then have some sort of appeal provision that allows them to come before the Board of Selectmen to override that determination.
Right, it was my understanding, yeah, that they would be the enforcement agency, as it were.
In the
But-
first
But the appeal,
blush, right.
appeal to us, if,
Right, I mean, there's really, this is something that you are crafting from scratch. So you can really do it in any manner in which you see fit that, is a legal process.
Does it make a difference whose name it's from, the Historical or the Board of Selectmen?
In terms of who
Anything?
is the grantor of the restriction?
Yeah.
I don't think so. Because it's not going to be a historic preservation restriction.
although I guess we might have an issue with the historic, I mean, I don't know, you're the liaison, would they be willing to sign this as okay, so I think it should be us that are going to be signing it.
That would make sense then.
I do have a question about Part 4.
Okay.
I noticed on the front it says 30-year, but then in Part 4 it says perpetual.
Yeah, I had that circled too, right.
And then it says perpetual, and if it's not by law allowed, then it goes to a 20-year. So how does that mesh with the 30-year on the front?
It should be 30, that's an oversight.
So this should be 30,
But it should also be renewable,
not perpetual?
correct. It's not going to be a preservation restriction, which is given a separate status under the statute. That's allowed to be in perpetuity. But because we don't have an entity that's going to be holding it, it was never going to be an actual preservation restriction. It was really, the attempt was to make it a pseudo preservation restriction that was providing all of the heft that goes along with one, but did not have the perpetuity provisions to it.
Yeah.
In this instance, it's going to be, valid for a period of 30 years, but it may be extended. But it requires all parties to actually agree to it.
So, I shouldn't speak for them. I mean, I don't know if they'd approve this
Well,
or not.
I mean, I thought
but-
that was what we had talked about, though, that we would be the ones
Well,
that would be signing it.
I think in the
and
first
then
instance, that really should be what your determination is what do you want it to be? I mean, if you want to be the
And it-
entity that actually,
I mean, it is us
is
that's
the
that's crafting it, not
Right.
Historic Commission.
The planning board approves things with provisos that come up at their meeting, that it's approved provided these changes are made, and they mention whatever changes. Do we have the ability to do that? If these
Got a
changes are
conditional
noted, then we
approval?
could vote on it tonight?
You mean a conditional approval of the preservation restriction if you have specific changes?
Well, we talked about the change,
Yeah.
we talked about the changes. If we approve those changes as part of our approval process, is it done?
I would think so, yes. I don't see why it wouldn't
As
be.
as opposed to waiting 3
Right.
weeks. Sure.
I would ask we not do that. And the only reason why is I look at this, and for me, the only meat to this I see is just the first article, the first, number 1. Because 2, 3, and 4 is just 2 says it's two-family, 3 says that, it's a restrictive covenant and it's a burden, and 4 talks about perpetual versus 30 years. Just 1 talks about what we're gonna, and it's literally 1 paragraph. We went from 31 pages to 1 paragraph.
That's fine.
Okay?
That's what we talked about initially. And,
Yeah, I was asked to try to get it down to a single page.
if, maybe we should put it to a vote.
Well, we have some more questions
Okay.
before we do that.
Yeah.
Number 3, can you explain what paragraph 3 says? This restrictive covenant shall be a burden said property and shall run to the benefit of the abutting property owned by the town of Chelmsford. What does that mean?
Sorry, I can't even see it. Should have brought a copy of it with me.
I'll blow it up, Paul. Second sentence in paragraph 3.
All right, so with every restriction, there has to be a property, because it's not going to be an easement in gross or something of that nature. This restriction actually has to run to the benefit of somebody, of some property. In this instance, it's the abutting property owned by the town of Chelmsford. So that gives you the right to actually enforce this restriction.
Okay.
So you need a
So
piece of land.
there's a burdened, somebody has the burden of the covenant and someone has the benefit of the covenant. So this is, specifically identifying who has the benefit of the covenant.
Okay, so that's something it wouldn't be just apparent because of the nature of it?
It's always better to be specific.
Okay.
So from what you're saying is you need to, when you write a covenant, there has to be a benefit and a burden, and we're identifying the burden
Correct.
and also identifying what the benefit is, really.
So the person that purchases the property, the 101 Mill Road, will have the burden of the covenant. It will be a burden upon that property, and the benefited property will be the abutting property next door.
Okay. Anything else? Laura?
I guess coming down to one page on this is a little bit daunting. I want to make sure that the Historical Commission is very involved in the say. I don't think that the Board of Selectmen should be the ones really determining what's historical looking. I think that that's sort of not really the job of the Board of Selectmen, and you never know who's going to be on the board. I think that we really however we write this, needs to make sure that the Historical Commission has a big foot in the door, because they're the ones who are going to protect what the
And
others
I'm not
have.
against voting on it and leaving it to the Board of Selectmen. I'm just asking that this gets sent to them for review and comment.
I thought that this was going to be sent to them and reviewed before it came tonight. I thought that was part of.
Well, I did receive an email. I didn't get to read it carefully because just as I was walking out the door, I got an email that said that it was brought up at their, I believe, December 18th meeting, but they didn't feel like they had enough time to review it in detail.
And they just met tonight, so we didn't get, yeah.
Yeah, they're actually in a meeting now, so I don't know
Yeah,
if they.
so, I mean, I guess I agree with Glenn. I mean, I'm ready to go ahead with it because I think if we send it back to them, it's likely that, do you have an interest in this, sir?
I do.
Can you tell me what it is?
I'm on the board, and I wrote the email late this evening.
Okay, if you could come up then to the microphone, please.
Good evening. Probably should have come up when it was public input, but I wasn't aware that this wasn't going to get brought up until, I thought I got this email in time. I'm Brian Strip, I'm 90 High Street, and a member of the Chelmsford Historical Commission. We have not met, our meeting is actually tomorrow night. We received this on the 18th, and we have not had a chance as a group to review it. we've read it. We've actually found that there was some public comment back. It was somehow released or got out prior to our review, and we weren't aware that that was supposed to happen. But we were under the impression that it was not going to get voted on until we had a chance to review it and bring back our amendments, thoughts, or whatever, because again, it went from 16 pages to 3 with four articles. And we don't feel that that adequately covers what the original intent was.
I agree.
And I would strongly oppose a vote tonight until we have a chance to review it tomorrow and come back with our comments.
Okay, now keeping in mind, I mean, you've heard our discussion, so we do want to keep it, a lot leaner, I guess you could say, than the previous
We
restriction
understand,
that we saw.
but there just seems to be some major things that were removed that we think are important, such as making sure that there's insurance on the property, that it cannot be raised or moved, and other things that, again, we've gone through it, I've gone through it, and as individuals, we've gone through it, but we haven't met as a board yet, or a committee yet, to go and put our notes together to bring back to you in a formal fashion.
Okay.
Well, will they be able to do that by
Well,
our next
it-
meeting?
I mean, I would hope so. Well, next meeting isn't for 3 weeks.
And ours is tomorrow night, right?
Paul, can you
Tomorrow
get them the new version that we talked, minor changes we talked about tonight? So you can review the final version that we talked about.
That would be, I mean, whatever final version you come up with, we would like to review and at least have comment.
Okay, and you will be meeting tomorrow,
Tomorrow
you
night,
said?
yes.
So, and you'll have time to, and you will review it tomorrow, so that,
We'll review it tomorrow, and then whenever, if, we'll get our comments back as soon as possible, but, if there's some deadline, we would work to meet that.
okay, I mean, I think, we are, it seems like it's been almost a year that we've been talking about this restriction in one way or another, so, I think if we
We
could
understand the urgency, but
put it on our
we still want to
agenda
make sure that,
for our next meeting for January 29th.
yes.
Okay,
I mean, I don't, with the weather we've been having, anything else, I don't know if there's a rush to get it on the market right now, but
well,
Let's look at it like-
there is some,
I know, but I think 2 weeks is,
3 weeks.
3 weeks is, I'm still okay with that if there's something we're missing here.
I am as well.
Would it be possible, if we're going to talk about in 2 weeks, John Souza could be here, because he's the one that heard the comments back?
Sure.
That the restrictions were too robust for anyone.
Okay,
Thank you for your time.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just want to respond to Selectman Diggs' question. I don't think really what's been discussed so far tonight with regard to changes are really substantive changes. So certainly the Historic District Commission can meet tomorrow night.
Historic Commission.
The Historic Commission can meet even if I don't get, the revisions to the draft document. Substantively, that's still going to be the same. What I think you're really going to want to be looking for is what provisions of the original document they think are necessary to be in this document.
Okay,
Is it okay that what comes out of them goes to him for evaluation, so when he comes back at our next meeting, he can comment?
absolutely. I would hope that would happen.
And I can,
Mike?
if you want, I can help to
Well,
foster it
Mike,
along.
I think,
Yeah.
Mike, you-
Madam Chair, I would just ask that I could have leave to speak with town council during the day. As you know, I've been working on the RFP, and I wanted to ask for a couple of changes in there. Very simple. Right now, it makes reference to an Exhibit A, which is the deed. The prior restrictive covenant prior document had 31 pages. Some of them included pictures of the facade as well as a brief historical description of the facade. Those were Exhibits B and C, and I was wondering if I could work with town council to craft a reference that would incorporate a couple of the pictures and the historical text for some reference at the bottom. Just so when he goes off and makes changes, if I could have leave to talk to him about maybe adding some of that.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, obviously, we also have the option when we bring it back again to change those.
Yep.
So,
But I just want to
Sure.
get it in the next 24 hours if possible, so
Sure.
the Historic Commission could see it.
yep.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Very good, thanks. All right. So we'll go on now to Board of Selectmen appointments of deputy constables.
Yeah, under the town bylaws and charter, the constable appointments have been handled on a calendar year basis, and so you have the request from Constable Ogis to reappoint the individuals listed on the sheet. There are no new constables who have not previously served as deputies on that list.
And this appointment runs through the end of
Runs
this
the
year.
end of the calendar year, right.
Calendar year.
Run through December 31st, 2018.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve the reappointment of the deputy constables as presented for a term of January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2018.
I will second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, we have some minutes. November 20th, 2017. Yes. Any questions or edits on that one? If not, we have a motion.
Make a motion to approve the executive session.
We show November
Executive-
20th first.
I have the
You have the
executive
Executive
first.
session,
Okay.
October 23rd.
Have them in a different order than you do. That's okay.
I'm just taking them from the, not the
Okay.
agenda, but from
Okay, they
the
seem to-
order that they're in as I'm reading them.
Okay, so you have October 23rd?
I have October 23rd, executive session,
Okay.
not to be released.
Okay. Did we have-
I will,
You were not there.
I can't, well, I came in late.
Oh, okay.
I'll make
Still
a,
second the motion.
Go right ahead.
Go ahead, George.
no. All right, I'll second the motion. I wasn't going to.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
I will,
Next is November 20. Which one is, what is next? November
November
20?
20th.
November
I
20th.
will make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of November 20th, 2017.
I will second that motion.
Okay, any discussion, edits, corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
December 4th.
For the December 4th, 2007 regular minutes, I wanted to make an edit to page 4, third paragraph from the bottom. I said that I would like to consider creating a master plan for the use of CPC funds or presenting a budget at a town meeting that does not require a 2.5% increase.
Okay.
And
Any other edits?
that was the only edit I had.
Anybody else have any edits? Okay.
Make a motion to approve the December 4th regular meeting minutes as amended.
Second that motion.
Okay. A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Then we had,
Make a motion to approve the tri-board meeting minutes of December 11th, 2017.
Second that motion.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion, edits, corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Not there.
You're sick.
And I will make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of December 18th, 2017. No changes.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any edits, corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're up to date. We're up to date on minutes. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Until we adjourn this meeting, right?
We'll give it 3 weeks. We'll give you 3 weeks to get these.
Okay. All right.
Part of our New Year's resolution, stay current.
Yeah. Okay, selectmen liaison reports and referrals. We'll start with Glenn.
I attended pair of recent school committee meetings, and I think the word that comes to mind is that respect, that all members need to respect each other, and I think that's what the townspeople expect of us. And I would hope that going forward, people think about that word a lot.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Laura?
I do not have anything to report.
Ken?
I don't have anything directly to report, but I do think that kudos is in order. We went through some pretty major negative cold numbers, and there's been no complaints from the schools. So congratulations, Paul.
Don't put the whammy.
I know.
There you go, there you go, you put the whammy on it.
But no, I just think that, for all the grief you get when something goes wrong, you should be given, an attaboy when things go right.
They really have been attentive, Kathleen, Gary, and them, and the school support staff. It really, and I think it reflects the investment that's gone into it. It's really been, because obviously we were very mindful of that as well.
And I have heard some people say, the pods, but it seems like once there's an issue, they get right in there, and if there's a noise in a fan, it gets fixed right away. If there's a little bit of a chill, it gets adjusted, so.
And obviously, we're watching from afar what's happening in Lowell.
I didn't want to bring that up.
No, but it's just that, it just shows you the difficulties that a community can have.
And these numbers, the temperatures have been
Historic.
Yeah, historic. So the fact that the system's holding up under this pressure.
Yeah.
So, good job.
That it? Okay, Glenn? George?
I don't have too much to say. I agree with what you said about the heating. I think it's great that everything's working out. I didn't want to jinx it myself, but
Now they
I'm sure
can
you're
do-
keeping records, so the temperatures have been pretty square. That's good. The one problem we had this week, I guess, we had a holiday, we had a storm. I'm sure that there's a lot of people with taking aspirins still from all the headaches from the trash situation. So,
Mike, do you want to give an update on that? Because we think we may have some good development.
Okay.
I posted late this afternoon, we were able to get a shift in some of the trash pickup and recycling pickup the other day. What we were unable to do the other day was get a Friday recycling pickup, which was problematic because the last 2 weeks covered Christmas and New Year's. I spoke with Waste Management, gave them some suggestions. They were under some requirements by the state, which wouldn't allow them to work that many days. I was called this afternoon that said they got approval from DOT as well as some aid from the state. So next Friday is going to be a recycling collection for both the red and blue sides of the community. So the entire community will be picked up on Friday for recycling. Now, if they don't get to you Friday, they're going to run trucks again on Saturday because they realize people are going to have 3 weeks worth of recycling sitting there. So
And that's this Friday?
yes, so anybody who has Friday recycling, regardless of the color, put it out this coming Friday. And if it isn't picked up at the end of the day, have it out the next morning and they'll get it. They should.
So does that mean that the red will have 2 recycling in a week, in a row?
Yes,
To get back on track.
yes, to get back
Okay.
on track.
Now, can you do a code red to the people that are in that situation? Because a lot of them don't watch this meeting, surprisingly.
You might be able to do a code red, but it's going to go to everybody.
area of code red. We can choose that, we can, believe it or not.
Yeah,
that's
I know
something
you
we
can.
designate.
Yeah.
We'll do that. We'll get
Okay.
it covered.
Okay,
And
I
one
mean,
more question that was a lot of confusion, at least on social media, was about the dumpsters behind Town Hall. There was sort of an argument going on that it was only cardboard, and then someone else said, no, it's all recycling. And I drove over and looked, and it does say single source.
Yeah,
So
meaning
for
single,
people-
single stream is what it
Right,
means.
single
Meaning
stream.
anything can go
So,
in there.
so for people that do have an abundance that
Right.
can load up their trunk, they can throw plastic and that's
Metal, yes,
everything
yeah.
in there.
and that wasn't restricted to Friday
No,
pickups?
it's forever. No,
Okay,
anybody.
because it kind of made it that you had to be a Friday
No,
trash person in
No,
order to
there's
bring
nobody
it there.
Stop
No,
it.
but they did offer, before they came up with this latest solution, they were going to put an additional roll-off back there to accommodate the people that were coming down who missed Friday, but this is the better solution.
I always thought those dumpsters were cardboard, so when I saw plastic, I
Originally-
picked it out and I brought it home and put it in my trash.
No, originally that was the case, but now everything's gone to single stream.
Yeah.
Part of the problem was, is not only did you have the holiday on Monday and then the storm day, their equipment was like, freezing in the, freezing up in the extreme temperatures. So that's why they were running long days, is they were having mechanical problems on top of the scheduling. I mean, it was just a perfect storm of creating a situation out there. Well, we were seeking any solutions last week. There was rumors, because some of them were founded, we were trying to see, well, could you put dumpsters on that part of town, like at the country club? They just didn't have the ability to get those containers there. So that's why we sort of directed people to here. So as we said, we've been working this, because you couldn't believe the number of phone calls that we received on trash.
Should have had a Sunny Meadow bonfire.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And the other one, while we're noticing things, I also want to acknowledge the collector's office. They handled it an unprecedented and probably, hopefully, not soon replicated demand around the holidays, particularly that last week of December, of people coming in on the prepayment of their taxes as a result of the change in the federal tax code. And again, they in what normally is a quiet, light staff period, they were full staff and straight out, and they were able to accommodate everybody who sought to come in, because there were obviously a large number of questions and inquiries. So really wanted to express my appreciation for the good job they did handling that on behalf of residents.
Okay, thank you. So George, do you have anything else?
No, that was it mostly. I mean, I was glad to know that, it's nice to know that, for the people to know how much behind the scenes you were trying to get things done, because they don't know that unless, so, I mean, because, I was wondering if like you said, they were willing to work Saturday, right? So, I mean, that's what one of my questions was gonna be, could they add an extra day on?
They did work Saturday.
Yeah, or even Sunday, right?
They couldn't
Yeah.
do Sunday. It
No.
became, as Mike noted,
Right.
there's only so many hours they're allowed to work. And
Yeah,
employees
well,
allowed to
I mean,
work.
that's a good point to bring up. I don't know if anybody was aware of that as well, because, so, I mean, it's
And the other problem is with the haulers, there have been delays tipping as well. So you've got the people who are doing the collection, we're having delays at the trash energy plants because of the demand there, because of the holidays with the extra volume. So it was just sort of everything coming together at a tough spot.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
it.
All right, and I do not have any reports this evening, so do we have any press questions? We do not. We have a motion to adjourn to executive session.
I will make a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss strategy with respect to the opioid litigation, not to return.
I will second that motion.
Okay.
Oh, aye. Is it a roll
I thought you
call?
said a no.
No, I said,
Yeah, we need a roll call.
aye.
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 Okay, we are adjourned. Our next regular meeting will be January 29th. Thank you.